All right. Ha! Welcome, everyone. It's our Inner Power workshop time. And I hope you're all having a wonderful weekend for those who are still in the weekend, and a great start of the week for those who are off into the new week already. It's funny how time zones work. Never quite uh, sunk in with me how that's possible. So, for those who weren't here, last session we're going to look at the 5 pillars of inner power. And today is the first pillar. Inner clarity is the focus. And maybe we can bring up that graphic real quickly to do a quick refresher. So, as we see the 5 pillars, we're going to start at the first pillar at the top, inner clarity. And that will then build up and lead to inner peace and inner joy and inner fire and inner purpose. And it's all related. It all builds up on one another. And so we're going to start with inner clarity today. And I have a special treat for everyone because you're going to see me at the whiteboard today. And I was we can remove the graphic. Thank you. A 25-year design consultant, and the whiteboard was my happy place. And because it's great to visualize things and complex subjects, so that you will see me whiteboarding today. So really, what is inner clarity? It's the ability to create space around your thoughts, right? In order to make clear decisions. When are we not making clear decisions? Well, it's because when we're in reactivity. So when we're in this reactive stewing, in this reactive juice, is usually when we don't make good decisions. Our mind is muddled, and we're really not taking in the facts. We're not looking at the situation as it is. We're in a state of confusion and disorientation and resistance and just overall reactivity that really is a disservice to us, really, to be in that state ever. Ever. There's never anything good that comes out of that. That's when we blame and start fights and become defensive, and all these things happen when we're in a state of reactivity. And so to generate this clarity within, so that we can assess the situation and stay equanimous, meaning keep a balanced mind so that we can make clear decisions, we have to learn to come out of that reactivity. This is the first step to all healing. It's this first step to being in the flow of life and really participating in life and not being in resistance to things, seeing them as they are and not wishing they were different according to our expectations and our projections and all that stuff. So how to come out of reactivity is to learn to experience our thoughts. And next week, we'll look into our feelings as well. Today, we're going to focus on our thoughts from a place of balance and equanimity and non-reactivity, non-judgment, so to speak. So how do we do that? Well, first thing is to recognize that we are not our thoughts. So much of our life is consumed by our reaction to our thoughts, meaning we identify with the thoughts so greatly that they take us on a roller coaster ride, day in, day out. Along comes a thought, and we just believe it. We don't have the ability yet. We haven't trained ourselves to have an awareness, the awareness muscle, as I call it, to discern whether or not we want to give our attention to this particular thought or not. We're not our thought. If you can be aware of a thought, all of us can kind of reflect on that for a moment and go, yeah, there's a thought, right? So you're not your thought. You are the awareness, the container through which the thoughts arise and pass, come and go. So you're not your thoughts. That's the first thing to understand. And that's pretty obvious. Who would want to be their thoughts? And that really gives rise to the next challenge, is that, okay, so we know that we're not our thoughts. We're much bigger than just any individual thought coming along. But why do we get pulled into them? Why do we get lost in thought constantly? Constantly, 50 to 70% of our day is spent lost in thought, thinking about things that have no relevance to the situation or the task that you're in. And so that's a lot of time spent not being here. That's a lot of time spent like lost and not really living. So developing that awareness muscle around our thoughts so that there's space, there's breathing room. That you may have heard the term gap. There's a gap between you yourself, your awareness, and the thought, so that you have some distance to it, so that you can observe it. And um, the important thing to understand is that we react to our thoughts so quickly, often, that we don't even have a chance to recognize that the thought and our reaction to the thought are two separate things. So I'm going to bring in the whiteboard at this point. All right, we got props. We got props, and we're going to do a quick little illustration. So the normal flow of thoughts is to come and go. All right. Thoughts arise and pass. That's just the natural flow of all thoughts. If you didn't react to them, and a reaction means either resisting them because they're unpleasant, we don't like them, or pleasant. Ooh, that I like that thought. I like that idea. And then we cling to it. So if we didn't either resist our thoughts or cling to our thoughts, they would just come and go naturally. They would arise and pass, and they would never impact us. They would never play a role. So we have a choice, which the quality of our life is dependent on which thoughts we give our attention to. Right? And so the normal flow is just thoughts coming and going. Sure, they have a charge. Some are pleasant, some are unpleasant. Same thing next week, we'll talk about our sensations, our feelings. Some are pleasant, some are unpleasant. But the natural flow of them is to come and go, and they're fairly even, right? Some have a charge, some one way or another, but it's a fairly consistent line. And it's only our reaction to a thought that turns it into this. So most of our energy that we spend, 95% of our energy is the reaction to the thought, not the thought itself. So we have to let that sink in, that when you come out of reactivity to your thoughts, even just 10%, even just 20%, that you start to gain clarity in your decision making, because you're actually just allowing the thoughts to be what they are, taking that information in, and then deciding, okay, I'm going to run with this thought, or the next one, I'm going to, that one doesn't suit me, it doesn't behoove me to give my attention to it, I'm going to let that one go. So this ability, this awareness, what we're describing here is just an awareness, living from your awareness of your thoughts. That gives you the ability to not engage with every thought that comes along. Because every thought that comes along and you just give your attention to, you become the thought. That which we give our attention to, we become that. We consume that energy, that whatever that thought brings, it becomes part of our mental emotional makeup. And all day long, if we're having disturbing thoughts or negative self-talk, all of this stuff, we become that. We take that energy on. There's a negative thought, we give it our attention, we take on that negativity. And the worst part is that thoughts feed on themselves. So if you give your attention to a negative thought, that negative thought leads to another negative thought. They just bring in this whole wake, in their wake, this stream of more negative thoughts. So it's very easy to get pulled into a spiral. And this happens to us all day long. I mean, even after years of meditating, which we'll do today, I still have, the thoughts that come along. And if I get pulled into that thought, then it just goes down the rabbit hole. So is to recognize that 95% of the energy that we burn is on our reaction to our thoughts, not on the thoughts themselves. If we just let them come and go, we're in a really good place. We're in a kind of a balanced, much calmer place. And from there, we can make clear decisions, and clear decisions lead to clear results. So anyway, that was my whiteboard session. And the three stages of enlightenment, if you will, are: one is to expose yourself to this information. And um, that's actually not that easy. Everyone that's here is exposing themselves to this information. So you're already, yes, lots of hearts I see there. You're already doing something about it. Thanks, Stephanie. Um, and I remember a time when, especially when I was going through my awakening, I had all these symptoms. I didn't know what was happening to me. And I hadn't been exposed to this type of information until then. And maybe that's, the search algorithms that you only find what you're kind of looking for, and you never get exposed to other information. So it was a big step for me to then finally kind of start looking for information that was relevant to my situation. And then suddenly there was more and more and more. But just exposing yourself, there's something has to happen for you to expose yourself to the information, to start the ball rolling. Yes, Descartes, I think, said, "I think, therefore I am." Does this statement contradict the idea of not being our thoughts? Yes, it does. And it's an extremely limited view on existence, I would say. So great question, Bo from Australia. So that's the first stage, is exposing yourself to information. The second one is intellectually, first we see it, we hear it, we read it. The second one is to intellectually get it, to with our mind, to understand what's going on. That was the whiteboard, right? We saw it, we can kind of visualize it in some way, and it hopefully makes sense, and it makes sense mentally. And that's also an important stage. When I was writing my book, right there, BU, that was a lot of mentally understanding that went into that, to create structure and to create anything. So the mind is a wonderful tool. It's you'll hear me talk about, the living through the head is the source of all of our misery. Hear me talk about that all the time, and it is true. But it's when we're exclusively living through the mind, we're not using the mind as the incredible tool that it is. We're not applying it to certain situations, certain tasks, but rather we're just letting it control us. And it's kind of the mind is a tool that's run amok. And I've had guests on my podcast that would be a big topic of why has this happened. And it's essentially, I think there's a somewhat of a consensus, or at least I like that explanation the most. It resonates the most, to say that the mind is just used to problem solving. It used to be we used to be in a state of constant alertness to make sure that we don't, that we find food, and that we also don't get eaten by the lion. And then in modern day, we really don't have those survivalist situations anymore. And so the mind it's still used to having all these real problems. So now it just creates problems. It's as simple as that. It continues that momentum of, I need problems to solve. And so it's looking for problems to solve. That's just what the mind does. And when you don't really see major issues in your environment, it will just find other ways to create problems. And it'll find minutia to create a big problem around something super tiny. And that becomes like the biggest problem. We get consumed by it. So coming back to a place where we are not our thoughts, we are not our mind, we're not controlled by our mind, we're not subject to this big roller coaster experience that I just drew on the whiteboard, so that your life is all the way up and all the way down, but rather you notice the stream of thoughts, and then you can choose to engage it. And by the way, this roller coaster experience keeps us very myopic. Like it's a very small anxious experience when we're constantly with our emotions and attached to our thoughts, which lead to emotions, and that way we never see the bigger picture because we're always in this reactive state. Reactivity pulls us into like a super small space, and we think that which we're experiencing that moment is everything. And so we lose the bigger picture and we lose the ability to make better decisions. So that's that roller coaster experience that when we come out of it, there's so much relief. There's so much instant kind of like there's a gratitude that just comes up naturally because that being stuck in the reactivity is a really tough place to operate from, and there's just your anxieties ruling your actions and your existence, your experience, and because it's a small place, you think it's you up against the whole world, and you feel extremely separate from everyone. Just you're just believing every thought that comes along, going down rabbit holes constantly. It's not a good quality. When you're lost in thought, in that moment you come out of it, you can feel the relief that there's so much pressure when you're lost in thought. There's so much anxiety and smallness when you're lost in thought. And when you come out of it, you kind of snap out of it naturally after a while. It feels like you're emerging from a fog or like mud, a swamp. And that's really what it is. By the way, what I just drew in terms of this big experience is often what we then, because we're so used to reacting to our thoughts and our feelings, that becomes our main understanding of how we relate to life. We think life is these big experiences, this drama. And when I work with people, they often will bring up that, well, now you're just more equanimous and in the state of flow, but I really want to live life fully, and I want the deep experiences. And I always respond was, do you really want the drama? Is this all the highs and all the lows? Is that really what you're seeking? Because you wouldn't be coming to me if you were happy with that state. So the thing is that we kind of get addicted. Our notion of what it means to be alive. It's this kind of addiction to these highs and these lows, and we really want to live life fully. And when you're in that state, you will do other things that will try to amplify that even more, because you think like, oh no, I have to experience something even greater, even more intense, even more like breathtaking, or even more daring in order to exceed, already what is a huge state of reactivity, to try to get even some more juice out of life. And we're really going into the opposite direction there of where we should be going if we want that inner peace, if we want to see things clearly for what they are and make decisions that facilitate the unfolding of life, as I like to say. And then you're actually participating. You're no longer in the small anxious space of every thought that comes along, every feeling that comes as a result of how we interpret thoughts. And but rather you're part of the greater current. You feel yourself more one with everything. You don't mentally create distance or separateness. A lot of thoughts are judgment and labeling and judgment and defining. Again, that's what the mind does. And if we let it just do what it does all the time, then we start to feel separate. We start to just judge everything, judge ourselves, right? That's the worst part of judging, and keep ourselves in a constant state of smallness and I'm not enough, and why me, and this all this self-talk. Michael Springer does a great job of it in Untethered Soul, to kind of highlight that constant self-talk, and to not have that is a huge relief. There's energy being burnt constantly. I come back to that. We're not doing this just for some kind of like, yeah, inner peace is already awesome, but it's to actually start living the way we're supposed to be living, which is very efficient, which is very productive, which is very joyful, and it's very easy and light and fun. These are all the ways that life is designed to be. And we're cutting ourselves off from that by just reacting and being mind driven, and allowing that to continue. And you look around, when you start to develop more and more awareness around this, you start to feel really lonely in a way, because the entire world is mind driven. This is all, wherever you see injustices in the world, it's because people are in their heads and they're driven by just thoughts, believing their thoughts, believing their mind. And the mind is you know, aggressive, it's accusatory, it's defensive, it's power hungry, it wants to control and steer. And there's just an absence of love and compassion when you're in your head for yourself and others. So it's just not a good place to be in constantly. Use your mind for what it's good for executing tasks and planning and organizational matters, but it's not meant to be your guidance system. It doesn't know you. It's just a tool you use. So, another question. How can this idea help us in our daily life? Can it reduce stress or anxiety if we don't get caught up in every thought? Yes, exactly. Because getting caught up in every thought is stressful. It just burns a lot of energy. You're concerning yourself with things that aren't real. In this mental space, it's an endless canvas where you can project all the worries in the world, all the future outcomes in the world, the what ifs, go backwards, and the I should have, and guilt, and all of this unpleasant stuff that really weighs us down and gets us into unhealthy places, is when we're lost in thought, when we have this endless canvas that doesn't give you any real parameters. The real parameters is the reality as it is in front of you right now. Those are the healthy boundaries. That's what keeps you connected to. We hear present moment all the time, but what really is that present moment? Is to live in a type of reality that is natural, that is organic, that is unfolding. There's an aliveness in there that isn't present in when you're lost in thought. And that's really what drains us so much, is that we lose touch with our own aliveness, with the greater current, the design of life, as I call it. That's not, lost in thought is not participating in the way life is designed to unfold, but rather it's unfolding right in front of us, right there. And connecting with our senses, and we'll do that today, is how we stay present. And you can kind of see it in some of the language that we use, right? Is to come back to your senses when you come out of reactivity. We use that language all the time, right? And there's these, even in pop culture, there are these sentences that kind of point to wisdom, that's ancient wisdom that's there. But we kind of gloss over that. So our senses, our five senses, are basically built in to keep us grounded all the time. So staying connected to those is really, it's as simple as that in conceptually. Now we have to go through a process of rewiring ourselves from this reactive state of judging, labeling things, where we see everything as separate from ourselves. When we judge something, when we label something, it becomes other, right? This otherness. And when we're constantly judging things, then we're constantly feeling like we're separate from those things. And judging isn't just negative, bad, blaming. Judging can just be, that's good or bad, that's right or wrong, that's for me or against me. That's this is the duality that we so suffer from, is this judging of good and bad. And so coming out of that to just experience things, right? I use the example of the tree. When you call the tree a tree, you've now created distance between yourself and the tree. It's a simple example, but if you do that all day long with everything and every person around you, then you're constantly reinforcing your otherness, your separateness. You're constantly giving your body little hits of, I'm over here, and the thing that I'm judging or labeling, defining, is over there. Even with something as a tree, the tree has incredible healing properties, and it's nature, and we are nature. But rather than feel one with nature, we distance ourselves. We create separateness by mentally labeling and judging things constantly. So this is how we create our, this is why it's healing just to walk into a forest. Um, I was I was talking with an old friend of mine yesterday who was describing his big shift. He had many moments of little shifts. He was a very successful insurance broker for a long time, and then it started having these glimpses of like what life is really meant to be. And he shared a story with me yesterday. It was really beautiful, of how he built up this empire of things and prestige and titles and reputation and all that. And one day a friend was had just pulled him along to go hiking in the national forest, the sequoias in Northern California. And right when he was in the middle of the woods, it hit him that he was feeling so connected and so peaceful and so joyful amidst the trees and the bushes and nature. And it cost him nothing. It was completely free. He didn't have to work for it. He didn't have to negotiate and strategize and like uh, roll up his sleeves and try to make something happen. It's just there. And this was one of his initial early awakening moments, is to recognize that our healing is right there in front of us. It's always available. Just going for walks in nature, we all know how beautiful and remarkable that can be. If you're in a snowy area, to hear the snow fall, and it's there's just this amazing canvas of beauty out there. And I remember growing up watching. I would come home from school early, and my parents weren't home yet, and I would sit down and watch Bob Ross, uh, maybe around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, an hour of Bob Ross, who was that painter, for those who are not familiar with it. And he would paint these beautiful landscapes, and he had this deep, peaceful baritone. Um, and so I found a safe place with Bob Ross. I see there's yeah, I see there's a question coming up. Okay, let's do some questions before we go into our meditation. How do you maintain a balance between listening to your inner voice and considering external feedback when seeking inner clarity? Ah, so your inner voice, great question. Your inner voice is what gives the external feedback, um, the type of the judgment ability, the backdrop, the context, so that you can decide whether or not to include that external feedback in you or not. It's not a competitive thing. It's not like, oh, there's your inner voice that's saying one thing, and the external voices, head voices, the conditioning says another thing, and now we're stuck in between. No, there's lots of valuable information in our environment. We're reading, hearing, seeing stuff all day long. The inner voice is really that says this resonates and this doesn't. This I'm going to take into my experience and do something with it, and this other thought or feedback I'm not. So it's more that inner voice is just saying this resonates. Lean into that, give it your attention, and then this other thing may not resonate. So don't give it your attention. So it's more of a GPS, the inner voice, than just like a voice that just tells you what to do constantly. You're still having to engage with the world around you. There's these endless energies that are scurrying all around us, and so it's not just voices that we hear, external feedback. It's also things that we see. It's external stimuli. Everything's an input. All of our senses are input that we receive, and then what do we do with that input? Well, that's where our inner voice comes in and says, this resonates. This is me. We've all had that experience where we heard somebody say something a certain way, or saw something happen, or we came across a piece of information, and we went, "Oh my God, that's me." Well, what is that? Right? That me is your inner blueprint that's responding to what you just saw or heard. So that's really what your inner voice is about. So, yes. Oh, great comment from Sarah here. Now, I think we have some control. Like if I catch myself catastrophizing, I can choose to reframe the situation, find a calmer perspective. That's true. So reframing is a very powerful tool. It is even more powerful, and that can be part of the journey. Absolutely. A lot of, we have to take the journey in consideration. We can't just say we can come out of reactivity from one moment to the next. It's literally rewiring just our head, right? And so that's not going to happen overnight. There are certain steps along the way. And reframing is very powerful. It's a healing modality, if you will, that I use all the time. Much of the knots that we talk ourselves and think ourselves into, if we just reframe, it relieves it, dissolves the knot, and suddenly you realize, oh my gosh, the situation that I thought was catastrophic is actually the best thing that ever happened to me. Literally, that's what, when we kind of take a moment to reflect, then we can see how everything's really going according to plan. It really is, and the challenges that we experience is because life wants us to grow. It doesn't want us to stay small and anxious and afraid. It's challenging us to let go of our wounds and our limited beliefs and our smallness. And that's behind all of the things that we're challenged by. Is it's pointing to things that need work, that need self-love, that need healing. And so that, just how about that reframe, right? Life loves us so much, it wants us to heal in everything that we encounter. um, and so it's challenging us. It's challenging us to heal. It's just funny to think about it that way. So, all right, if we have any other questions, because I want to make sure. Yes, it's challenging us to heal, Sarah. Oh, yes, next question, please. How can we start quieting the noise and achieving inner clarity? All right. So I call this thought awareness, right? Awareness is just like a muscle. It's just like going to the gym. And it's not necessarily the time when we're practicing this is not when you notice the outcome. This is what, anyone who goes to the gym, is that's not usually when you notice how much new strength you have. It's later on when you're carrying your groceries or playing another sport, which you were just kind of getting in shape for, and that's when we feel our strength that we develop. But the going to the gym, this thought awareness practice, is the part where it's tough. So we have to recognize that we're rewiring ourselves from reacting to our thoughts to observing the thoughts, and it takes some time for all that reactive nervousness in our head, that nervous system, to just those nerve endings to just kind of wither, and kind of die away. So it's literally the practice of developing an awareness of your thoughts. And that's what we'll do for the next 15 minutes or so, is just to notice when the mind has drifted, and then bring your attention back to our breath, right? We're going to do some breath work here. And I call it thought awareness because you're just developing your awareness of your thoughts coming and going, coming and going. And within that exercise, you're going to notice very quickly that your mind keeps drifting. It keeps drifting. So it's important to recognize that, and this is the gym analogy again. You don't develop your muscle when say you're doing bicep curls, right? When the weight is down, your arm is straight. You're not developing your bicep then. Obviously, the weight is down. When the weight is up, you're also not developing your bicep, right? It's in the in-between state that we develop our muscle. So the weight is down. That's not where you want your attention to be, the analogy, right? You want your attention to be focused on your breath, which is where you want it to be, up here. But it's the journey in between, right? That is where you develop the awareness muscle. So when you're lost in thought, you obviously don't want to be there. That's the weight being down. When you're focusing on your breath and you're not lost in thought, that's the weight being up. That's great, but the focus should not be on, oh, I need to keep my attention on my breath longer, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, all of that. It's the in between when you notice that your mind is not where you want it to be, you're lost in thought, and you bring that attention back to where you want it to be, which is on your breath. We're just using breath as a very simple universal tool. So the ability to notice that your mind has drifted, and then without frustration, without reactivity, that's the key, right? Without reactivity, bringing your attention back to your breath. That's where we build awareness muscle. That's where we come out of reactivity. This is analogous to every life situation that we currently encounter. We see something that is different from what we want it to be, right? Our attention is not where we want it to be. And then we react to it. We're like, I don't want it to be this way. I want it to be different. Right? That is what reactivity is. And so to notice calmly, evenly that, okay, situation is not the way I want it to be. What action can I take clearly to bring it and to where I do, where it should be, where I want it to be, without burning any energy on reactivity, without burning any energy on resistance to the situation as it is, but rather just to see it clearly. Okay, there's the thought. My mind is lost in thought, and to then take action to bring it to create what you do want to have manifest, which is to bring your attention back um, to your breath. And that's all it is, over and over. I've done this for free for a decade now, and that is what develops your awareness muscle, so that when you do go out into life, we encounter situations that are not the way we want them to be, that we can just see them as they are and then take clear action, right? We never lose, we never get lost in reactivity to the situation. We never lose the balance of our mind, but rather we just accept it, right? Acceptance is the first step to surrender. And from that place of acceptance, with calmness, we take action. And this probably, before we start, is another important point to note. It's not observing your thoughts and observing your feelings and observing the situation, the reality around us we're not doormats, and it's not meant to just allow everything to happen as it is. Something I hear students say often is like, it feels like initially that you're just kind of, uh, letting things happen when you're no longer resisting them. Well, you are letting them happen, but you're letting them happen so you can see them clearly, and you can take effective measures and react, no longer react, but respond to the situation, and take clear action, as I call it. Buddhists call it right action, informed by the reality in front of you, not by weird judging thoughts about it. So that's something that might come up at first when you start out on this journey, and you learn to just really stay calm and balanced as you're engaging with the world. You're just like letting it happen. It feels like, well, I'm not, because I'm not resisting. I'm not. I'm validating. I'm allowing the situation to be, and that's not right or something. No, you're letting it to be because it's already happened. Your resistance and reaction to it is not going to change it. A situation has already happened. So resistance is futile, and nothing will ever change that's happened by you resisting its happenedness. So it's just to see it clearly for what it is, and then take action. And that really is most productive, most effective course to achieving your goals. And again, those goals are not external voice goals, but those are goals that have emerged from your inner voice, your calling. When you start to navigate by what resonates and what doesn't, then that inner calling that starts to become your main focal point. And then you're led by that, not those outside voices that drive us crazy. That one day it's one thing, next thing is, hey, it's another. So that's the most important thing. Yes, private coaching is always, if you want to really go in depth with all these topics, you can jump into private coaching. Before we go into our meditation, also we have a conscious community group that you can be part of. Some of the names I see here are already there, and that's where we get to enjoy more of this, and some. You get a free trial, so that's you have nothing to lose, and we experience. You get some inputs from me and my life, and we have some fun polls and quizzes, and you just get to connect with others. And that's something I wish I had had when I was going through my big shift, and I had no one to talk to. So a lot of this is informed by having a place to go to share, and even just to share, right? To feel heard and feel safe, and even get some answers by others who are in the same situation or have gone through it. That's something that's dearly needed when we feel like we're aliens, and the world around us isn't understanding of that anymore. Yes, Bo. Repetitive. I've realized how repetitive my thoughts are. Like the same worry keeps popping up on the loop. Yeah, it just feeds on itself. And if you just blindly believe every thought, there's a whole army of thoughts in its wake that are similar to that just keep looping, keep regurgitating. And again, don't look at it as something bad or something wrong with you. No, it's just like become aware. Greater awareness around the thoughts will rise um, to more awareness about everything. So the decluttering, the clarity that sets in, clear decisions lead to clear results. All of that is the output, the end effect of this. Okay, we have perfect 15. Oh, another question. All right, one more question. When faced with overwhelming situation, what grounding practices can help me access my internal strength and make decisions with confidence? Well, what we're about to do is um, an extended version of something I do all the time, all day long, which is to bring my attention to a breath, some focal point. I use the breath because it's always there. It's super simple to access. I just kind of, just like focus within for a few seconds. It already does the trick. But there are other practices in yoga, for example, when you're trying to hold a certain pose, that you're meant to find a focal point so that you're balanced, your mind is balanced, and that then is reflected in the balance of your body. So there's different things. There's mantras, making a sound, chanting, different things. My favorite one is just the breath, because it's so simple. Nobody else notices that you're doing it, and it literally, it's so quick that it just becomes part of your just your being. It's just you're walking through the world with an awareness of your breath, your aliveness, your body, your connected state. 30 to 50% of your awareness, as we develop this thought awareness, and the next week we'll go into body awareness, should be with your presence, with your sensations, with how your thoughts and your feelings. You should always be aware of them at all times, so that you don't act blindly. And if you reach the point where you go, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I've been living, blindly at the mercy of these thoughts that come along. It can be a rude awakening, and in a way, it's miraculous that we get to anywhere in life just purely led by our thoughts, because that's the monkey mind. It's all over the place. And to get anything done that way is just a hard way to go, just hard. And it's a miracle that we get anything done. So with that said, all right, we're going to do a 15-minute. This can be challenging for many who have not meditated, but in a community, in a group setting, it's a lot easier. So I've worked with people who have never meditated before, or the longest that they've ever been able to sit was 6 or 7 minutes, and 15 seems like a stretch. It's not. When you're in kind of a nurturing environment and you have the accountability of a group, then you can do a lot more. So that's part of joining the community, is that you just have that support. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead. I'm going to set the timer here. I'm going to start out with instructions. Those of you who have attended my weekly Zooms may be familiar with this already. And so the first 5 minutes or so will still be guided, and then there'll be a larger chunk where you're on your own. Just do the best you can, knowing that we're always doing the best we can. No one ever, and this goes for, when we see other people and we have challenges and issues and friction, is just to notice, or with our parents and all of that stuff, it's just to know and recognize that everyone's doing the best they can. If they knew better, they would do it differently, but they don't, and for whatever reasons, they're acting the way they are, and just to accept that is the best they can do at that time, and that already brings a lot of relief. Acceptance, seeing things as they are, brings tremendous relief. So that's what we're going to do with our thoughts. So we're going to see them as they are, notice when our mind is drifted, and then bring our attention back to our breath. And we just do that over and over. And if you do this every day for 15 minutes, you're doing it today, that will have a tangible, real impact on the quality of your life. And you will learn to come out of that reactivity, and you will learn to see more clearly and make better decisions. And good decisions lead to healthy harvest, healthy big trees that feed on themselves as well. So the positive upward momentum spiral starts to build. Okay, all right. Let's get into a comfortable position. Spine straight if possible. And with our eyes and mouth closed, focus on the incoming and outgoing breath at the entrance of your nostrils. If you have trouble locating your breath, you may breathe slightly harder once or twice. And when you feel the touch of your breath, return to natural breath, normal breath. Let the detail of your breath pull you in closer, closer into the present moment. If your breath is shallow, let it be shallow. Deep, let it be deep. If it's more in the left nostril, let it be the left nostril. If it's more in the right nostril, let it be the right nostril. Or if it's in both nostrils, let it be both. Notice the temperature of the incoming breath. Notice the temperature of the outgoing breath. Notice if there's a difference. Notice the pace of the incoming breath. Notice the pace of the outgoing breath. Notice if there's a difference. And whenever you find that your mind has drifted, simply notice it, and with as little frustration as possible, bring your attention back to the incoming and outgoing breath at the entrance of your nostrils. Natural breath, normal breath. Observing your breath as it is, not wanting it to be different. All right. I hope everyone enjoyed that. This will be your assignment, homework, from this week to next, is to every day take 15 minutes. If you only have 5, do 5, but 15 is recommended. And do what we just did and see the gradual but tangible changes that come into your relationship with yourself and to the world around you by becoming more aware of our thoughts and choosing, having the ability to choose our destiny. So, with that said, I wish everyone a wonderful evening, the rest of your weekend. And those of you who are already on to Monday, enjoy the week, and we will catch you next time. Thank you so much. I also want to, those who are in the Inner Power community group, I'm going to do pop-up style 15-minute meditations every day this week. I'm going to do the homework with you. So feel free to jump in and join on those at any time. And you'll see the messages in our WhatsApp group. Many hearts. Thank you for all the hearts. And we'll see you next time.